What do we got going on here? Oh, we got the other guys. It's nice. It's kind of nice today. Yeah, we're live. 7:03. So a couple of minutes late. Couple of things today. First of all, the turbos are back in stock at richardholderperformance.com. So we've got G42 journal bearings, G42 ball bearings, GTX 3584 RS journals, and ball bearing versions. Hurry up and order them. They are going to all sell out very, very fast. Jimmy's packaging up all the stuff. We've got the back orders that are taken care of now. And we have like a few that haven't been spoken for. I can't believe how fast these are selling, but they're very popular. And the reason is because they're excellent turbos. We did a lot of homework and made sure that these were good pieces, and they are. And so they satisfy a lot of needs. The immediate response up to 800 horsepower, get the smaller turbo, get the 3584 for stuff that if you want to go to like 1200 or so, get the bigger G42 turbo. Both of them excellent. Lots of guys running around with the bigger stuff. And also lots of guys for towing and things like for a 4.8, I definitely would put a 3584 on it. Even for a 5.3, it's an excellent choice. And then what I like is what people will do is they'll put that on there and they're like, oh, this is so awesome. I've got a low butt truck camshaft and I've got this little turbo. I say little, it's 800 horsepower turbo. In fact, we've made more than that. So it will go, it's rated at 900. So it will go beyond that. But I have this turbo on there and I can make, immediate boost and all the power that I want. It's so responsive and it's so awesome. And then later on, what they do is go, you know what? This is really good. I love it. It's awesome. But be really good is if I was making G42 power and I could go into 4-digit stuff and then they upgrade the turbo and then away they go, which is awesome. You could also do twins. You could also run the 3584 or the G42 on other things. Like we're going to talk about 5-liter Ford stuff tonight. You could run it on that, either one of those, depending on what kind of power level you want on one of those. 464 valve, all of the import stuff, a twin turbo RX-7, like I always talk about. A Nash Metropolitan, a 300 inline 6-cylinder, whatever you wanted to do, a 2J, an RB, a K-Series Honda, B-Series Honda, all of those would be great applications for either one of these turbos. So my advice to you, hurry up and get those. And also currently right now, today and tomorrow are the last 2 days of the sale. You order 2 or more items over the last 4 days or whatever when I first announced this, and you get a free t-shirt. So Go get that stuff done. Go to richardholderperformance.com and make that happen. The other thing that I wanted to mention is today was cool because I got to get together with Todd. He's always here on the live feed. He's got a 6-liter turbo deal, and he brought his. We got to meet and have a drink and hang out a little bit for lunch. He was going to a wrecking yard, which now, because he's told me about this wrecking yard that's close to me, I now want to go visit it, and so go just to hang out at a wrecking yard because me, there's nothing I like better than like walking up and down the aisles. And it'd be cool to go to a different one that's here locally for me, and it's not the one I always go to down at West Tech. So I want to go do that. He said there were even some 6-liters there, so I want to go check that out and go look at that. And I got to what I did for Todd was while we were sitting around talking about stuff. He brought his laptop and his Holly program for his turbo 6-liter, and I took a look at it and was able to make a few changes to it that hopefully will help him out with a little more conservative on the timing. And I couldn't really adjust I did some adjustments on the fuel side of it, but because I don't have logs that show me, hey, look, with this kind of number here in these values, it made this air fuel, which I have to quantify this. All I could do was, what's going on here? All I could do was make sure that, the NA power level, whatever those values are, it's double that, or I usually double it plus 5 or 10%, double it plus 5 or 10 at 14.5 pounds. And then his was a 2.5 bar deal. So we went up another 50% or whatever up above that. So I scaled that, interpolated all that, did some changes to the like commanded air fuel because he's running under closed loop. Like I said, took a bunch of timing away under boost because it had way too much timing in it. And so tried to help him out. And that's kind of cool stuff. I mean, first of all, Todd's awesome. and you guys might remember he's the guy that sold me the Trail 90 that I have. So he's a local guy, and it was awesome to see him. It was awesome to see a fellow performance guy and get to hang out with him and help him out, because that's what this, let's face it, that should be what this industry is all about. People helping each other, get stuff done, man. So that's kind of what it's all about. But tonight we want to talk about the 5-liter Ford stuff. You can see the photo that I have up is a 5-liter Ford. And this one had started out as a blueprint or a Marshall engine, it's like a rebuild kind of thing. And then we put some ported heads on it, some aluminum heads on it, put a camshaft in it. This is one of the ones that we did when I was doing the comparison between the 302 and the 305 Chevy. We ran them both with Torqstorm superchargers, centrifugal blowers on them. And the question for tonight is, because this comes up a lot of guys are asking, hey, if we run, because you see, we did a comparison the other day about the Honda stuff where we ran a centrifugal blower and a turbo, and you can kind of see the rising rate, the increasing boost pressure curve of a centrifugal blower, typical of all of them, a Vortec, a ProCharger, Torqstorm, any kind of centrifugal blower is like that. You run more engine speed, it runs more boost, it has a rising boost curve. That's what they do. So then the question becomes, okay, well, Richard, what if I ran this kind of thing with, like on the Chevy version, it would be a tune port manifold. So I get lots of, low speed and mid-range power, and it doesn't excel very well at the top, but the blower does that because it has a rising boost curve. So it artificially does that. Same thing with a 5-liter Ford. We ran a long runner, trick flow, street heat or track max or whatever they're calling, some sort of long runner, upper and lower intake manifold. It's not a TFSR version. It's not the box intake manifold. It's one of the other more kind of normal longer runner versions. And so we ran that on there. So is that, let me know what you guys think. Is that the ideal combination, that where you get a long runner manifold that makes low speed power, and then we get a centrifugal blower with a rising boost curve that artificially kind of fills in the top end? Is that like the best of everything? Yes. Let me know. And the thing is, and this is kind of why I wanted to talk about this, that we talk about that and you think like there's logic behind that. There's an internet level of logic behind that. Yeah, we got all the low end and mid range, and then we have all the top end. You put those together, that's like the best of everything. It is, until you see the curve of something else. What happens if we want to run a positive displacement blower on this thing? What happens if we run a turbo on this thing, where we have, like, instead of 10 pounds at the top, we get 10 pounds everywhere. Now we have, like, hey, look, we have this, and it still makes the power out at the top like the centrifugal does. The only thing it does is make like a whole bunch more torque in the middle part of it. Until you see it and compare it to something else, the discussion, while it might seem logical, and know that I think it's awesome. I ran a centrifugal blower, a Vortec supercharger, A trim and the B trim, and ran that in my Mustang for a long time, for 85,000 miles in my 5-liter. Drove it around every day. It's the only car that I had, so I drove it every day. It was not only was my daily driver, it was my only driver. So I had that and ran it with the blower, ran it to Silver State, took it to top speed shootouts, did all kinds of crazy stuff with it, and it worked fantastic. I loved it. And it did well. I always had some sort. I never had really a short runner manifold on it, except when I was testing. I almost always had the stock HO, which we ran with the blower. We had a GT40, which we ran with the blower. We had a modified versions of the Cobra and extrude hone ones and all that. But they were always some kind of long runner deal that wanted to make peak power with that 224, 232 cam and good heads on it, So we had trick flow high port heads on it back then. So we had much better than a factory head, maybe not an airflow research head per se, let's say, but certainly good heads, better than stock. And so we had a good combination, and it wanted to make peak power at, like, I don't know, let's say 57 or 5,800 RPM, not real high RPM, but pretty good. And then with the Vortec, it could continue to climb a little bit. So it was a good combination. But if you were to put a turbo on there that's a 700 or 800 horsepower turbo, the GTX 3584 RS, for instance, it would be immediate boost, and it would make 10 pounds immediately and then carry 10 pounds all the way across. If we assume that that's what we were running with a centrifugal, give you a whole different perspective. If you remember, you guys can go back and take a look at the video that I have up where we ran a really good example of this is where we ran the tune port small block Chevy, and I made my own kind of single-ish turbo Callaway version, my low buck Callaway version, because theirs is a really cool twin turbo and it looks awesome. It has the 2 Bear intercoolers on it and stuff. But we just made like 8 or 9 pounds or whatever. And we ran a single turbo. The guys from HP Performance, Jimmy, the guy who's now with Richard Holdner Performance, Jimmy did a kit for those tune port Corvettes. And so we ran a turbo on a tune port Corvette. And as it did when it was NA, where it makes a lot of torque, makes much more torque than it made horsepower, it did exactly that under boost. Because if you can get it to have like 8 pounds and carry 8 pounds all the way across, it's controlled by the wastegate, and you can get it to do that, it's just going to be that same curve. It's just going to be elevated everywhere. So instead of, 300 horsepower and 400 foot-pounds, or 250 horsepower and 350 foot-pounds, it's like, it's like 500 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds under boost. So it's just that, but with more stuff. And if you, it's not necessarily going to rev any higher, but you could theoretically, if you wanted to, with an electronic controller, you could produce a rising curve. So if you wanted to make it 10 pounds through most of the curve and then have it scale up at the end, if you could get tricky like that, you could do that. And so, but the thing is, would you be using the, at 4,500 RPM or even 4,000 in this case, actually even 3,500, would you be using the torque that you had there from the turbo motor more than you would be using this big top end charge from a centrifugal? Let's assume that they were doing the same thing up at the top. Which one of those would you be using more? Now, the centrifugal does have boost going all the way through the curve. It's just that it's lower down at the lower RPM and higher at the top. So, that would be up to you. But on the 5-liter Ford, this thing worked great. We ran it with this combination on the 5-liter Ford. We then took the same supercharger, obviously with a different mounting kit for the Chevy, ran it on the Chevy, and we ran it with I think that was a Dodge, or not a Dodge. I want to say Dodge Stealth because Dodge Stealths are cool. We ran it with a Holley Stealth Ram intake manifold, basically a tunnel ram with a front mount, tune port-ish kind of throttle body mount for it. And we blew through that. And that's a good manifold, a little bit better for higher engine speeds, I would argue, than the Ford one. But certainly capable of making good power. And then when we blow through it, even more power. Both of these were, could be 600 plus horsepower combinations with the supercharger on it, just as it would be with a Vortec or ProCharger. And, all of that's good stuff. So let's see. Let me know what you guys got going on. Lunchbox, Jordan, Rain Man, Jet, Rich is in the house, Neil. The XFI 236 cam used in the 347s about as treatable as a 274 and a 302. I don't know. I've never driven one around with fuel injection on a 347. So I can't say that. I don't think it would be. I think it would be wilder than, I think the idle quality would be not as good as the 274 was on a 302. Riker, what's going on? 5.3, wanting to run turbo limited by pump fuel. Would you use Gen 4 rods and pistons or use the Gen 3 internals for lower compression? I think you should use what you have. If you're going to get one and you have access to a Gen 3 or a Gen 4, just get the Gen 4. Just put you don't have to build something specific for what you're talking about. You're going to have to limit timing and boost anyway. If you're trying to run it on pump gas, that's going to limit what you can do. So you're not going to be making a whole bunch of power on pump gas anyways. So because we can make 4-digit power levels with the stock stuff, as long as you put ring gap in it, you're not going to be anywhere near that where you have to worry about the strength of the internals. Strictly 5.0 or 5.8, go bigger. Yeah, I would agree with that. I wish I would have had 351 in mine. Turbo Street rules. Scottish is in the house. 6-liter stroker. The Holley Auto Tune does a great job of tuning fuel. Yeah, and Scott or Todd's thing was he does run it in closed loop, and so he commands air fuel. So I just went in and made sure that the commanded air fuel was what it needed to be under boost. Are we going to silver state? I don't even know if they're doing that anymore. I need to look it up. Richard, you replied to my comment about the Pro Max heads. They flow 267 at 500, price at 1200. Highly considering these. What do you think? I think that's 100 CFM more than a stock head. So that sounds like a win to me. That they're going to be way better than any stock head. What headers do you run on small block forwards? Worried about leaks with ported ports? I think early on, I thought that all of the headers that we ran Hooker Super Comps on them for Fox chassis Mustangs, and they were multi-piece ones. I thought that they were 1 5/8. I would almost swear that they were. They might have been 1 3/4. But a lot of the Ford things that I ran could have and should have been run like some of these stroker ones, 408s and 427s, stuff that were making 600 or 700 horsepower. Certainly should have run better headers than that. Spend an extra 200 and get 185. It's an as-cast replica of an AFR 185, and you can grow into them if you want to make changes later. Lose nothing if you decide to leave it alone. Do they? Who makes the 185? Is it Airflow Research that makes the 185, or does ProMax make it? I don't know whose that is. 150 truck with a big turbo. 185 will likely even outperform 180 on a mile build. It's just a nice, efficient port. You're not going to lose anything from going to a slightly bigger head. We've shown that many times. Really should have the G40 1150. I think it would be the ultimate turbo. We're looking at a GT35 84 1050. Just ordered a Ripper Junior camera. Kind of pumped. There you go. Congratulations on your purchase. I've been looking at a Torqstorm supercharger for my 408. I'd like to see a supercharged 408 set up on the dyno. We did run that on a 408 LS. Pretty sure. Not a Ford, but a 408 LS. But you should get an idea on what it does. The ProMax Project X 185 is a replica of an AFR Renegade. The ProMax 180 is the same casting as a Flowtech. The 185 is a superior head. If it is indeed an as-cast version, so a Renegade is different than is a as-cast version of their CNC head. If that's the case, that's a good head. I mean, like I said, you're already 100 CFM over stock, so that head will support more power than you're going to make. Got my teeth cleaned today. Pretty rigorous with dental hygiene. And even I'm shocked with the difference. What brand electric water pump do you recommend with engine and mid-plate build? I don't recommend an electric water pump for driving on the street if that's what you're doing. If it's just drag racing, the electric water pump that we always use is a Mazir. But I don't know about the flow rate for that for a drag race car. You'd have to talk to Don over there. Richard just picked up a chopped Willie's body with your cousin. The guy was a good friend of George Barris. Rough but wild body. Okay. Correct as-cast replica of 185 Renegade. What's your opinion of a Holley high ram for an LS application? Fabbing adjustable runners to add to the lower plenum to increase mid-range torque like the Carbon PTR. Have you ever thought about trying that? Yeah, we actually I did a drawing long ago, years and years ago, but back when Holley kind of first came out, about an insert that added runner length to the high ram. It could use that to make more low speed power. The high ram is still not, obviously it's better than the low ram, but it's not like a fast or anything. Studying for an algebra exam, not going well. Don't remember what we covered yesterday. You could have Kyle Morris on and talk 5 liters and blowers. Who is Kyle Morris? Is that Steve's brother? What are your thoughts on the Harrop kits? Have you tested them? I have not. I like all the Harrop stuff. I think it's from the looks of that, they look like that they're like really high quality stuff. I don't like the tight GT35 turbine for highway driving. I don't understand. If you're driving on the highway, you're not in boost anyways. Oh, Steve's son. Okay. I'm actually gonna do. I have something planned with Steve, so I'll get to meet him. It would be cool. When do you recommend switching to a solid roller for 8.2 decks? Usually for high RPM stuff. I think as an XFI 236 would likely be a little wilder on the street than a 347 versus a 274 and a 302. What are your thoughts on a 282 for a 347? 232, 240. It should be between those two. I just don't think it's as good a cam though as the XFI camshaft is. And there might be better options now from other people like Bullet or these other guys rather than just it being a comp one. On the Windsor, it'd be cool if you could test old NASCAR stuff. Westech had some old Cup motors. I don't remember seeing a Ford there. They had some Chevys and they definitely had some Dodges, but I don't remember seeing a Ford one. You and Kyle should collaborate for a 5-liter Big Bang. That would be cool. And I would definitely talk to him about that. Just watch Harp's video on the supercharged Cleavor. Been watching a lot of small block Ford content. There you go. ProMax Project X 185. Does anyone have testing on them? Is it a relatively new head? I don't know anything about them. Small block Ford low buck truck camshaft. That would be good. Did they have Winston Cup engines? Yes, they had different variations because they were owned by Dan. They were owned by the guys at Lucas Oil, and so they were probably like, 8-year-old ones or 10-year-old ones or whatever. They had one that was wildly disappointing. That was more like a 650 horsepower one, and I don't know if that was some specific class. If it was I don't think it would be a road race engine or anything like that. I don't know what it was for. But they had the others that were more like a more cuppy, let's say, that were, they're probably like 850 or something. Project 185 has been tested lots as an ASCAS replica of an AFR 185 with 1136 stems instead of 8 millimeters. Why did they go that route? Why didn't they keep the 8 millimeter stem? Thought they used Windsor lower ends with Cleveland style heads. On the Ford Cup motors? Have you ever made a dry sump small block Ford? I haven't. The closest we've come is run an AccuSump on stuff. I know a few things about algebra. And what about algebra 2? I have no idea other than to keep the price down. That's what I'm thinking. It had to have been a price conscious thing, or maybe they needed for legal reasons to make it different. That kind of thing also happens. I have 220 ASCAS trick flow heads and 228 230 cam. That's the sloppy stage 2, an LS6 intake. What size throttle body do you recommend? I would recommend the throttle body that's the size of the opening on that intake manifold, which I think is 78 or 80 millimeters. New Calculus 2. $11R twisted wedge heads are still impressive. They are. There's no shortage of good Ford heads. They've been doing them for a long time. Just like there's no shortage of good LS cathedral port heads or rec port heads. There's a lot of good heads out there. Like I said, more often than not, the people that are getting these kinds of heads, people are not making all of the power that those heads can actually make. There. There. Oh, the dogs are on alert. Have you put your enforcers on a build yet? On the Ford stuff. I haven't. Do you V-groove the quench pad ever? I haven't done that. We're working on doing a test where we soften the chambers, though. Sturgill, I don't know what you're talking about with the wrap, but I don't. The 202 intake valves hit the pistons on small block Fords. It would depend on the cam timing. You familiar with any of the Frankenstein heads? I have not tested any of those heads. Riker, what did we knock out quick? Crazy to think a NASCAR engine is only meant to last 500 miles, given it's 500 miles flat out. Yeah. And actually, most of the motor is still good. I think the springs would be a problem, would be definitely one thing I would check. Oh, yeah, Riker, no problem. Happy to help. Richard, are you selling small block Ford parts? Yes. Turbos, injectors, billet boost blocks, all those fit Fords. What else? Maybe the springs. I haven't checked that yet. Sounds like it's missing, but I think it's in the timing and firing order. Yeah, when the motor's running right, it shouldn't sound like it's missing. There. I see a Ripper cam order. Ripper Jr. Sounds like it's missing. I certainly wanted, when I was looking at Todd's tune, he was gonna take it home. Maybe he'll come on here. He was gonna take it home and plug it in and get his thing running. I think he had a bad coil also, so he got that fixed. And I think it's running on all the cylinders now, which is good. And so hopefully he'll be able to go run around at low boost. I told him just get the air fuel right, drive it around a little bit. If you're running it under closed loop, the air fuel part of it should, I put it at 11.2 or 11.3 under boost. So it should, if it can trim that will be fine. And then the air fuel at idle and all that stuff is 14 or whatever. And then in the mid 12s for load. NA. Todd, what's going on? There's Todd. Stock A2 decks can go above 500 horsepower and last. They can, I tell you. Oh, so you're thinking that they can? I have seen them do that. I mean, I've run endless dyno tests on things and at that power level or above and had no problems. But I don't know that what we're doing on the dyno is the same as a guy drag racing and stuff. Because I have seen them break. I've never seen them break at 500 horsepower. Although, no, I take that back. I did see one break at much lower than that power level. The guy was road racing at Road America. But see, I don't know. It did split the block, but I don't know if something else, if it was maybe an oiling problem or something else. Thanks for answering all those questions. How'd you get your start? I wrote my first story for Turbo Magazine way back in the day, back in '89 or something. And that's kind of how it all got started. Some people put a dam between the valves to keep the intake charge from going out the exhaust. They'll get better mileage on a cup. That's cool. That's cool stuff. Did they soften the chambers on cup motors, Dan? I was talking to a guy last night at Summit when I was picking up parts. He plans to run this year. Said tires are tricky to figure out on his Miata. He said you start rookie no matter what. Oh, for your first one? Are you talking about the Silver State? I mean, in a Miata, unless he's got something in it, he's not going to go very fast in the Miata anyways. Low buck truck cam versus an AMA or a GM ASA cam. I think, do you know what the specs are in that ASA cam? I think the ASA cam is bigger. Constant debate is all. So many people think they split. Well, they do split. We know that happens. We know that. I don't know that they all do, but they have split before. So that's not the question. The question is what made those and not others. Just weak webbing behind the timing cover near oil sender. I was thinking of looking into it as a goal with my son and a little Z car. It is fun. And definitely to do something with your son, it's definitely a cool deal. Even if you just go into, like, I don't know what the rules are because I haven't been there for a long time. But when we were going, they basically had what they call like a touring class, which is like 100 miles an hour or whatever. And then they had different speed classes, like 110, 120, 130, whatever, all the way up to the unlimited class. And the goal was for you to leave the starting line and average exactly that number. So guys with held the rally clocks and stuff and trying to get exactly the average speed that they wanted for that distance. And you know, they've got GPS going and all that stuff. So they're trying to get, and they're going to 3 decimal points, which seems odd to me, given the fact that they're all doing this on stopwatches, including the timing. But it's all good fun. And it's a good time. They do a car show and everything. So it's all car guy stuff, which is really cool. B Series Honda for the win. I do like B Series Hondas. And I remember seeing that the first time I saw a B Series Honda. Hello, what are you guys talking? Who are you guys talking to, huh? Who are you guys talking to? What are you doing? What are you doing, Bruno? Huh? I feel better, huh? I feel better. I do. I'm all better, Daddy. Huh? I am. Go get him. You tell him what's up. Give him the business. I remember the thing I was going to say is I remember seeing first time I saw a B Series in a Mini Cooper. I thought that's awesome. And it was an old school one too. Come on. Silly thing. Got a 347 stock block, AFR 195 head, solid roller, then tend to make a hydraulic roller for street use. It's got about 1 billion passes with 540 on the dyno, 7,500, and the block is fine. Okay. We had to do all the trucks to keep them from detonating. Oh, on softening the chambers. Yeah, when the compression was unlimited. Did lots of chamber R&D. Yeah. What fuel are they running, Dan, in those cup ones? Odd question. Any way you could show a comparison between an LS9 Plus on a 5.3? I don't know that I have, because I only have those cams on different motors. And so the starting point might not be exactly the same. Heaps of variations on why a 5-liter will crack in half, even worn out engine mounts or gearbox mounts or diff, thrust on the engine. There's all kinds of stuff. I mean, we could just what if it to death. What's with the hand in front of the camera? This is an auto-focusing camera, so you can sometimes shock the camera into recognizing that it needs to refocus, and it does work. See those fellas up in PA about putting an Austin V12 into Fox body? Was that Tony Angelo? He's the only guy I know that did that. B Series in a real Mini would be hysterical. It was really, really cool. I mean, I really like Mini Coopers, especially the older ones. The newer ones are cool too, but it really needs a different motor. I did see one that a guy did, which was awesome, and he grafted a 4-valve BMW motorcycle head onto that and the drive assembly and stuff, and it was on that motor, and he turbocharged it, which was really cool. A friend of mine bought an EK with 13.1 compression V16 a month ago. The bore split last week. Does a detonation problem or something? Sunoco 112 until they went to E15 in 2012. Okay. Even with that high compression. Yeah, a 13-to-1 B Series shouldn't hurt itself. Shouldn't do that ever. I remember 16-to-1 compression being said on a B series. That'd be hard to get. You had to grab an associate, Todd, for going to Walmart. I don't have that at the Walmart that I go to. Scrolling. Mayo, I'm not going to be able to help you. I can't hear what you're talking about. I mean, I obviously can't hear the motor. And even if you sent me a video of some noise, I don't know what that motor sounded like to begin with. So don't know. I've never been able to diagnose anything when somebody sends a video and says something's making noise. I would just guess the same things that I would guess when somebody was explaining it to me. Is it a loose valve train? Is it a broken spring? Is it a rocker? Is it a push rod not being the right length? Is a lifter going bad? Is a cam going bad? It's just all the normal things. All right, Ram Man. Send the car to a mechanic. It's a common sound. Do you hear it on other LSs? Because I've run lots of LSs. Wish QFT would bring back their green 650 double pumpers, E85 metering blocks, and yes, you can modify anything else to make the corn juice work. Those carbs were green. Oh, you wanted it to be green? I don't know if you could. You'd have to change a lot to make a gas double pumper into an E85 carburetor. You'd have to change lots of passages and the metering blocks, not just the jetting. The metering blocks themselves, I think, can work like E85. What cam and size injectors would you suggest for a 5.3 running a root supercharger running 10 pounds? None of those things that you just said would dictate what cam I would pick. So the cam that you should use or could use on your 5.3, you need to tell me how much power you want to make. You need to tell me what kind of idle quality you want, whether you're using it with a stock converter. All of that stuff is going to dictate what kind of camshaft that you want. It has nothing to do with a roots blower or a 5.3. It has nothing to do with any of that, other than the displacement affecting what idle quality would be with a given camshaft. But tell me those things. Are you using a stock converter? Does it have gears in it? What vehicle is it? We need to know kind of how heavy it is and what gear it is, and then I could suggest it. And are you wanting to make power like at high RPM, or are you more interested in low and mid-range stuff? Getting ready for Route 66 fun this weekend. New points and condenser, 10 more gallons of Sunoco to make blow-through carbs too. I know, I've used quick fuel stuff before. You see Cleve's got 10th place at Talladega with a car that's down cylinder. I did see that. I follow his stuff. It's pretty cool. I was wanting to buy Brodix IK200 heads for my small block 350, but an engine builder told me I'd be happier with IK180s for the street. What would be the positive and negative effects either way? I would rather get the bigger heads to grow into so that you could then put it on your 383, which is what you would build next. And I don't think there would be a downside to the 200 heads versus the 180s. Have you ever tested the Mercruiser marine intake for the big block Chevys? I haven't. Fiorentino, what's going on? Fiorentina's garage. The 180 versus 200, not a big jump in displacement or in port volume. And when we did jumps like that, you don't see too much at wide open throttle. Where you might see it is part throttle, but I didn't get to drive any of these around to kind of find that out. Rich, I have a 95 302, a 90 roller cam, 570 lift at a link bar roll lifters, AFR 185. Is the rest of the motor stock? And then what size is the chamber? The 180, AFR 180 is the port volume of the intake runner. So if you told me what the chamber size is, or you could go to Wallace Racing compression calculator and put in all of your data and figure it out. But I'm going to just take a guess that it's like at 9, it's somewhere in the 9 to 9.5 to 1, based on what the AFR stuff that's available. 94 Mustang, running a B31 cam, 6 PSI Torqstorm, 185, and Explorer intake. She runs awesome. Yeah, that would be good. Is the B31 a Anderson Motorsport cam? I think there was an Ilmore intake for inboard ski boats. That was really, really good. Fluid dampener worth the money for a mild small block Ford. Harmonic balancers are annoying to pick out when having to decide 28 or 50. Or internal. Yeah, I don't think I would run a 50 ounce if I was putting together another motor, unless all of the stuff was already for 50, because it's sometimes hard to get the crank done to go from a 50 to a 28. Most of the aftermarket stuff is not 50 unless you specifically want that. Almost all of it would be 28 or internally balanced. I don't know that you need a fluid damper. You're just going to need some sort of new damper. After watching Holdner vids, I'm wondering why companies even bother selling small runner heads. I think people still believe that the small runner head makes more torque, and at wide open throttle, that doesn't seem to be the case. Got a 302 with a Vortec V1. Got 24 pounds of oil pressure when hot. Running 2050. Got 30 psi above 2000. When should you be worried about low oil pressure? Stock bottom end. That seems kind of low for a small block Ford. Where are you feeding the blower? It's not a self-contained V1, right? Where are you feeding the blower relative to the oil pressure gauge? And then, hey, maybe it's time to put a high volume pump in there. I do believe the Chinese could mess up a cam. Do you think they got the simplicity of injectors right? I don't know. And the thing about the cams or anything else, like there's lots of stuff like to have discussions about this, about like Speedmaster stuff and CX Racing stuff. There are things that I would use that are manufactured somewhere else, not in the USA. Because something is made in the USA doesn't make it good, not automatically. Because something is made in China, it doesn't make it bad automatically. Like everything in life, there are good things and there are bad things of both sides of those things. And so there are certain things that I would use. When we looked at injectors, for instance, which was kind of your question, we looked at the 50-pound injectors, and we won't do the offshore like 50-pound injectors, which those are out there. Ours are not that. We won't sell those. I want them to all be the same, and I want them to be good quality, and I don't want to have to test every injector, because we can't do that. That's way too labor intensive. Trying to get around 600 horsepower, 4L60 stock converts, and 91 GMC Sonoma. Want to be a daily driver with some strip time here and there. Then I would get a low buck truck camshaft. Hi, doggy. And 10 pounds, you could certainly do that. It's low in the area of the new pump to see if it might help bearings. You recommend building a 4.3 V6? Yes, it would depend on your power output, what your desired power output is. If you're saying I want to make 1,000 horsepower, that's not the combination that I would pick. I'm not saying that can't be done. I'm just saying it's like way more expensive and time consuming and frustrating to try to do that. If you're just wanting to make your 4.3 better, then yes, you should do that. You should put a cam in it, put springs in it. You can port those heads. There are some intake manifolds, but there's not a lot of stuff for that. Not like there are small block Chevys. What's your opinion, experience of down leg versus annular boosters? How can you find the strongest signal and prove it in his home garage other than a snap rev that barks? I don't know. We've never looked at that for like a drivability standpoint, because we don't normally do that on the engine dyno. So I don't know which one of those would be better. If we did a test on that, and I don't think I've ever done that. I'm sure that I'm thinking that the Engine Masters guys had to have done that. Brule is really a carburetor guy. And so they may have tried that. The thing that I always go back to is, if you're doing a test like that, are you only changing the booster? And then if you are only changing the booster, is the rest of the carburetor not tailored to that booster? Is the design of the venturi and the entry and the exit, is all of that, will it work better with one booster style than the other because of other things that are external? Do you need to change both of those? If you do change both of those, what is the thing if you change two things? And then the test is, does it work better? Does it give a better signal or whatever? Does it change the air fuel curve at wide open throttle? Does it change the power? Does it do that at different RPM ranges? Does it do that at different horsepower levels? And then for wide open throttle is one thing, but then what does it do to, snap transition and drivability and all that stuff? That's not stuff that we can do on the engine dyno. What about injector size? I really appreciate all the advice. For 600 horsepower with a blower, you should look at the 80s or 1000 cc injectors, the 80 pound or the 1000 cc injectors that we have on the store. Because that way you could also, when you want, you could run any kind of fuel. As long as your pump was big enough, you could run pump gas, or you could run E85 or that kind of thing. The blower feed line coming off the factory pressure sensor, metal block, just drilled and tapped. Also, the pressure sensor is there too. Maybe I should do an oil sample and check for metals. What I would do is, if you want to check to see if your oil pressure is really like that, is I'd take the belt off the blower, and then I would take the oil feed off of the blower and plug it, and then see if your oil pressure is different. So now you're just running oil pressure to the sending unit and not bleeding some of it off going to the supercharger. Is that why your oil pressure is low? Because it might be that your oil pressure is not low. It's just that the signal going to your gauge is low because of the thing that you've taken off to feed the blower. So the oil pressure in the system might not be that low. So do that, and you can find out. Think I get a 4.3 to 500 horsepower? I definitely think you can, not naturally aspirated. I mean, again, you can, but you have to go find some aluminum Bush National heads or Brodix heads or something for it, and then a big cam and a tunnel ram you have to make and all that stuff. With boost, 500 horsepower is not a problem at all. You put it on a flow bench and check the signal with a manometer, one hole at a time. If you have a small bench, I have no idea what to compare it to, though. You'd have to try a few carbs. And then my point, Dan, would be, if you saw a difference in the airflow of the carburetor of that hole with different boosters, what does that translate to? Does more flow translate to a better signal? Does less flow translate to a better signal? And then how does that translate, like when it's running in a transitory thing, a different RPM and all that? Aaron. We don't even have a poll, right? Is that? Okay, is a long runner intake and centrifugal blower the ideal low, mid, and high RPM combo? Let's see. And do you really need a stronger signal? Yeah, all of the we have so far we have lots and lots of questions. How much power do NASCAR trucks make? Don't they run 4.3s? Different level of build though. And a NASCAR truck doesn't run a V6, right? I thought that they stopped running V6s in Busch Grand National stuff long ago, and I thought that everything's V8 now. But laminar versus not high-tech mysteries, Dano, and I will figure it out. Will it support a turbo and 100 shot? Mario. Why do you need a turbo and 100 shot? We use annual boosters when we were restricted to certain carbs, but booster changes were illegal. Is an LS6 close to a 92 fast and performance-wise? It is not. A fast 92 is better than an LS6 and better than a Trailblazer SS. It's not quite as good as a 102 fast is. But it's an LS6 is one of the better factory intake manifolds. Hard to beat a fast. Fast is good stuff. Turbo and nitrous for the no lag go fast setup. That's it. And the only thing better than boost is nitrous and boost. Wow. As long as you have a cam that revs to 6,000 or better, long runner and centrifugal supercharger. A stock cam will rev to 6,000. Need to do the active variable runner length and the pole combo. I really need to do that. I need to make a sliding trumpet intake manifold. That'd be cool. Just for that'd be like YouTubey kind of cool. And I think it'd be easier to do as a straight up and down stack manifold, but a cross rammy thing would just be better. Whoever can guess how long a GT40 tubular is. The GT40 tubular intake manifold? It's pretty easy to measure it. We measured them back in the day. I can tell you that the runner lengths vary from runner to runner on a 5-liter Ford. The two forward ones are not good. We always wanted to make the big tube version of a GT40. We needed more tubing diameter and then more bottom section too. Nitrous and boost on Bill. Nitrous and boost on the 4.3 is a long walk home. Yeah. I saw that Freiberger and Finnegan have the Datsun again. I don't know what motor is in it now. Is it a 5-liter or is it a 4.3? What's in there? I thought it had a turbo sticking out of the hood. Speaking of dogs, my dog and I were watching a cooking show. When they showed the barbecue meat, the dog started sniffing the air as if the meat was right there. Our dogs watch TV a lot too, and they're very interested if there's any kind of animal on there, birds, if there's any kind of dog or wolf or anything. And then for sharks, for some reason too, they're very interested in sharks, and they love Spanish, they love soccer, but they love the Spanish announcers in soccer. And then also anything that David Attenborough's on, they love. I mean, let's be honest, who doesn't? Is a long runner intake and centrifugal blower the ideal low, mid, and higher PM combo? We are split at exactly 50-50. Ever tested a Spider EFI manifold? Was a Victor Jr. based? Yeah, all of the ones that I saw were Victor Jr. based. And I have tested those a lot. Jake just reacted to the dog's barking. He looked at the monitor, tilted his head. I get that. Some of the other guys the dogs would talk to each other. When I'm talking to Jimmy on speakerphone in the morning, he has golden retrievers also, and we're letting the dogs out at the same time. So they're barking, chasing stuff, and my dogs are barking, chasing stuff, and they're listening to each other and getting alerted and stuff. Looking to make 800 horsepower, the bigger turbo, 408, AFR heads, curling RPM, super sniper, stick car, 2,400 pounds. What cam? Is it going to be Edward? Is it going to be a driver? If it's a driver, I would put like a 274 cam in it. If you want something that has more chop to it in a 408, then I would put that XFI cam or something like that in there. Either one of those cams will easily make 800 horsepower. I mean, that turbo's good for another 50% above that. The dual plane will tame the cam down, a bigger cam down a little, because it'll have better. Is this a carbureted deal? As a super sniper, it'll have better signal, but either one of them will work. I wish there were different examples of the Ford stuff that I've tried. 56% are saying no, that's not the ideal. My dogs are interested in rabbits. Mine, the squirrel name. I can't say that out loud because then they want to go get it. They talk to them because the squirrels will sit up in the trees and jump from tree to tree and stuff. We have a big backyard where they're all over, and it goes down into the creek and stuff. And the squirrels know that the dogs cannot climb the trees. Should I go to small turbo for instant response? I think on a 408, a G42 is going to be plenty responsive. Any plan to test Ford's new 4.6 PI manifold? I didn't know that they had one. Ford introduced a new PI manifold for a 4.6 for an engine that's been gone since in the early 2000s. We have squirrels that run along our fence, look like they're chasing each other. They do like squirrel Olympics out in the backyard. They're all running around looking for nuts and stuff, but they get to, I don't know, maybe they're talking smack to each other or something. They get to chasing each other around, and it's just the dogs like go crazy. But they walk on all of we have a brick fence or whatever that goes all the way around, and then on all the wires and telephone poles and stuff, and they're all over the place. On the poll, I'm going to go with no. A positive displacement blower works better at making more everywhere power, while a long runner manifold will choke out the centrifugal's greatest advantage. Interesting philosophy. When you talk about squirrels, I have some always in my backyard, and crows chase them. Yeah, the birds will, like, we get blue jays, and they'll yell at the squirrels sometimes. The runners look shorter. In fact, it's more Dorman looking than the original PI manifold. Okay, I'll have to check it out. I wasn't aware of that. New Ford PI intake manifold, Ford Performance, late model restoration. Manufactured with all new tooling. See, this is why I come here. This part is intended as a replacement part for use only in the applications intended. Manufactured with all new tooling, this production composite intake manifold was engineered for use on the new manifolds. Larger bell mouth, shorter runner, more rounded runner, deeper plenum, fits 99 to 04 PIs, off-road use only. Let's see what that looks like. It does look different, doesn't it? That is different than a PI manifold, definitely. That would be interesting, yeah. $7 PSI for 500 foot-pounds from 2,500 to 3,500 out of a 427 works always. Okay. If you want to attract squirrels, put out bird feeders. Yeah, definitely. Or tunnel rams considered long runners. Well, a high ram, which is a tunnel ram, is not a long runner. It's longer than a short ram, but that's why the long and short thing is just wholly subjective. A tunnel ram is longer than the short runners on a single plane. Maybe not as long as the long ones. I'd have to measure those to see. And again, it would make a difference exactly which ones we're talking about. Some tunnel rams are very short. Some of them are longer. None of them are as long as like a fast manifold or a factory manifold. The new PI manifold basically runs somewhere between the OE PI and the Dorman from what I've seen. I'd 100% run on a Vic, but maybe not a Mustang. How do you know that it lands between an OE PI and a Dorman? In terms of what? In terms of power output or in terms of runner length? It looks shorter. It looks shorter than both of those. Has anyone made the J Series Honda Hellcat supercharger adapter kit yet? Bring back the Kenny Bell. Kenny Bell still makes blowers. We got 2 more minutes. Is the long runner intake and centrifugal blower the ideal combo? No, Richard, it is not. It's not ideal. I've seen dyno tests and the old PI wins. For the Fox Body Kenny Bell. I did videos on that. They have Fox Body blower kits available. That's the ones that I did it on. That's the one that they redid. It's really nice. The new kit is better looking than the older kit. I think I need to rerun the Dorman truck manifold for the LS again. Will a 190 pump run a Torqstorm on a stock long block? A 190? I think I put a 255 in it. Couple dyno videos that I've forgotten who precisely did them. They ran a stock Mustang PI intake manifold, the Dorman and the new PI. The new PI beat the Dorman everywhere, but lost 4,500 and up to the... That doesn't make sense. If the new one is shorter, why would it lose at higher engine speed to the stock PI manifold? Does Keith Black still build engines? I don't know. Yeah, they did. Like I said, that I did a video with Mark where we did one. We did engine dyno stuff and we did chassis dyno stuff. This says deeper plenum, but in a larger bell mouth, but I don't know. It doesn't say anything about volume. And on that note, I wish I had a 462 valve because then we would need to do a big bang on it. But we could also test intake manifolds, which would be cool. I haven't run a 4.6 on a dyno in a long time. But on that note, we will see you guys all tomorrow.